Hello, welcome back to the deep dive. I gotta say, usually when I prep for these conversations, I'm armed with coffee and, a sense of, okay, let's learn some facts. But today I'm feeling a little vulnerable.
Vulnerable. That's not a word I usually associate with historical analysis. What's going on?
Well, we're talking about Valentine's Day,
Mhm.
and it just made me realize how, I don't know, how bad we are at actually talking about love. You're staring at that blank card or a text message and you just freeze. Like,
Mhm.
feels too small, but love is terrifyingly heavy if you've only been on 3 dates.
Ah, yes. The linguistic minefield of affection. It's actually what some people call the English effect in this context.
The English effect.
Yeah, the struggle to find the exact right tool in the language toolbox to match what you're actually feeling.
Exactly. Feels like we're missing some wrenches. So I looked at our research for today, the history, the legends, and I realized we're not just talking about a holiday. We're talking about a vocabulary.
We are. To really get how a day about a beheaded Roman priest became a global chocolate fest, you have to look at the words. We actually have a blueprint here of 10 specific terms that are like the pillars of this whole thing.
Right. So we're going to use these words not as a quiz, nobody wants that, but as a way to unlock the history. Because when you dig in, the history of Valentine's Day is, well, it's not the Hallmark movie I thought it was. It's much bloodier.
Oh, much bloodier and way more confusing.
So let's start at the very bottom.
Mhm.
The foundation, the guy the day is named after. Or is it guys?
Plural.
It's guys, plural. That's the first problem. The Catholic Church recognizes at least two, maybe even three, martyred saints named Valentine, all connected to February 14th.
Okay, so who are they?
You've got a priest in Rome, and then you have a bishop in Terni.
And they both meet a pretty bad end on the Via Flaminia.
They do. But the legend that really stuck, the one that gave us the holiday, is mostly about the priest, Valentine of Rome, back in the 3rd century. And to get him, you have to understand our first word, adoration. See, when I hear adoration, I think of like a puppy or maybe a really intense fan of a pop star.
And that's the modern kind of watered down version of the word. Historically, adoration is heavy. It implies a hierarchy. You look up at something with this profound love, respect, and worship. It's not a peer-to-peer feeling.
So this wasn't romantic adoration.
No, not at all. In the 3rd century, it was purely religious. The Roman Empire was not exactly a friendly place for Christians then.
Understatement of the millennium.
Right. So you have Emperor Claudius II. He's fighting wars. He needs soldiers. And he gets this idea in his head that single men are better fighters. They have less to lose, basically.
So he just bans marriage for young men. That's a wild HR policy.
It was brutal. But Valentine defied him, and this is where his personality comes in. He wasn't just some passive believer. He was fervent.
Fervent. I like that word. It sounds a little like fever.
It actually shares a root. It means having this burning, intense, really sincere passion. Valentine's faith was fervent, so he starts performing secret weddings for these soldiers. I mean, can you imagine whispering the rites by candlelight in some cellar, always listening for the sound of Roman guards?
That's incredibly cinematic. But it's also treason.
Oh, absolutely. But think about it through that word adoration. He believed he was facilitating a sacrament, that these men had a right to be married under God. It was a gesture of ultimate defiance.
A gesture. We think of that as something small, like opening a car door or buying flowers.
Exactly. We think of small social signals, but a true gesture is an action you perform to convey a really deep feeling. Performing a wedding that could get you executed. That is the ultimate gesture.
It's life or death.
It is. And of course, it was death. He gets caught.
Right.
And this is where the history gets a bit fuzzy, blends with legend. He's thrown in prison. The story goes he befriends the jailer's blind daughter, Julia, and, well, he miraculously restores her sight.
And then they executed him.
On February 14th. But the detail that survives, the real kicker, is the note he supposedly left for her.
Signed.
From your Valentine.
The first Valentine. It's so strange that we still use that phrase on millions of cards without realizing we're quoting a man about to be executed.
It is dark.
But it doesn't explain the romance part, does it? A martyr is noble, but it's not exactly a candlelight dinner. I always heard the romance came from the pagans.
Lupercalia?
Ah, Lupercalia,
Yeah.
the wolf festival. This is everyone's favorite bit of trivia to sound cynical about the holiday. Oh, it's just a pagan fertility rite.
Well, is it not?
Yes and no. But mostly no. Lupercalia was celebrated from February 13th to the 15th. And if you think modern dating is rough, wow.
I read the notes on this. It involves goats And dogs.
It does. They'd sacrifice goats and dogs, and then, and I'm sorry for this visual, they'd strip the goats' hides, dip them in blood, and run through the streets, gently whipping women with them.
Gently whipping.
That was the idea, yeah. The belief was it would make them fertile, ensured easy childbirth.
Okay, I'm going to go out on a limb and say that's not a romantic gesture. If my date showed up with a bloody goat skin, I'm blocking his number immediately. I should hope so. And that's the key problem here. Historians have looked for a real link, proof that the Pope just swapped out Lupercalia for Valentine's Day to Christianize it.
But the evidence isn't there.
It's just not there. Pope Gelasius, I did abolish Lupercalia in the 5th century. He called the people who did it vile, but he never said, and now we're doing Valentine's Day instead.
So Lupercalia was about fertility, sure, but it wasn't about courtship.
Exactly. Courtship, that great kind of old-fashioned word for wooing someone, for dating with purpose, that whole idea just didn't exist in Lupercalia. It was a ritual. It was mechanical.
So if the Romans were busy with goats and the Christians were just getting martyred,
Yeah.
who actually invented the lovey-dovey part? Who decided Feb 14th was for romance?
Believe it or not, we can pretty much pin it on one guy, Geoffrey Chaucer.
The Canterbury Tales guy? No way.
The very same. In the 1380s, he writes this poem called The Parliament of Fowls.
Fowls as in birds?
Yep. The whole poem is about this big conference of birds gathering together to choose their mates. And Chaucer specifically says it happens on St. Valentine's Day.
Okay, but why birds? And why February? If I look out my window in England in February, the birds aren't singing, they're shivering.
That is a fantastic point, and it gets to a calendar issue. In Chaucer's time, they were still on the Julian calendar.
Oh, right, before the big Gregorian shift.
Exactly. The calendar had drifted, so his February 14th would have felt a lot more like our late February or even early March, the very first signs of spring.
So the birds actually were starting to mate.
They were, and Chaucer did something brilliant. He used the birds as a metaphor for human suitors.
A suitor. That's a word we don't hear enough. It implies a real pursuit, doesn't it? A man, or a bird, I guess, who is actively trying to win someone over.
Yes. And by putting this on birds, Chaucer made the whole awkwardness of human dating feel natural. If nature does it, then your feelings aren't desperate, it's just natural law. He dignified the feeling of yearning.
Yearning. That's such a specific feeling. It's not just wanting.
No, wanting is like, I want a sandwich. Yearning is this intense, deep, persistent longing. It implies a distance. Courtly love in the Middle Ages was built on yearning.
So Chaucer writes this thing about birds, and the nobility just runs with it.
Pretty much. The English effect takes hold. People start using the day to express that yearning. We find a letter from the Duke of Orleans to his wife from the Tower of London in 1415 calling her his Valentine.
Wow.
We see it in the Paston letters in 1477. It just becomes a thing. It becomes the day for suitors to make their move.
But these are still private handwritten notes. It feels very intimate. When does it become the huge industry we know today? When does it become about the card?
The 19th century, the Industrial Revolution.
Yeah.
And more specifically, the postage stamp.
The penny black.
The penny black, 1840. Before that, sending mail was expensive and complicated. Suddenly, for 1 penny, you could send a card anywhere in the UK. And this is the crucial part, you could do it anonymously.
Anonymity. That changes everything.
Completely. If you have to hand-deliver a note, you have to be brave. If you can mail it, you can be bold. You can proclaim your feelings without the immediate risk of rejection.
Proclaim. To announce publicly, or I guess in this case,
Yeah.
boldly but secretly.
It just unleashed a flood. Cupid's manufactory, Dickens called it. Factory lines of women putting together these intricate lace cards. In the U.S., Esther Howland becomes the mother of the American Valentine, and then came the chocolate.
Richard Cadbury.
1868. He puts chocolates into a heart-shaped box. But the genius wasn't just the chocolate, it was the box itself. It was designed to be beautiful, to be kept.
Right, so you eat the chocolate, but the box stays on your dresser. It becomes a token, like a term of endearment.
Exactly. An endearment is usually a word like honey or sweetheart, but here the object becomes the token of affection itself. It's a physical reminder.
So we've gone from a dying saint to birds to mass-produced lace and chocolate. But what's really fascinating is that this English effect doesn't stay English, does it? It goes global.
It does. But as it crosses borders, the meaning changes. The vocabulary gets tweaked.
Okay, let's talk about Japan, because their Valentine's Day confuses me, but I also kind of respect the structure.
It's very structured. In the West, Valentine's is just vaguely about romance. In Japan, it's about navigating intimacy versus obligation.
Intimacy, that real closeness and familiarity.
Right. So in Japan, only women give chocolate on Feb 14th. But they have two distinct categories. First is girichoko.
Which means obligation chocolate, right?
Yes. You give this to your boss, your male coworkers. It's not romantic. It's a social lubricant. It says, I acknowledge our professional relationship.
Which is pretty much the opposite of intimacy.
Precisely. It defines the boundary. But then you have honmei choko, true feeling chocolate. That is reserved for your lover or the suitor you have your eye on. The distinction is critical.
And the men have to wait a whole month to reply.
Yeah. White day, March 14th. And they're expected to return the gift, often at like triple the value.
Triple. Ouch. That's a high price for courtship.
But then look at South Korea. They take it one step further with Black Day on April 14th.
The day for single people.
Exactly. If you didn't get chocolate in February and you didn't give any in March, you get together in April, you wear black, and you eat jjajangmyeon black bean noodles.
See, I love that. It turns the yearning into a communal event. It's like
Yeah.
we're all in this together, eating our sad black noodles. It takes the sting out of it.
It does. But I think my favorite linguistic shift is in Finland and Estonia. They solved the whole Valentine's problem by just changing the noun.
They call it ystävänpäivä, right?
Mm-hmm.
Friend's Day.
Yes. It's not about romance at all. It's about celebrating the people you cherish.
Cherish. That's such a warm word. To protect and care for lovingly.
And you can cherish a friend just as deeply as a partner. So in Finland, the pressure is just gone. You send cards to your best friends. You celebrate the community, not just the couple.
I think we could use a little more of that energy over here, honestly.
I agree. It just broadens the whole definition of love.
So we've really built quite the toolbox here. From Roman executions to Japanese corporate chocolate. When you lay all these words out, you get a totally different picture of the holiday.
You really do. It stops being about just buying a card because you feel like you have to.
Right. It's the gesture of a rebel priest. It's the fervent belief that love is worth fighting for.
It's the yearning for connection that Chaucer saw in nature. And it's the bravery to proclaim that feeling, whether it's with a note or a text.
It's navigating courtship, figuring out the difference between obligation and real intimacy. And at the end of the day, it's about taking a moment to cherish the people in your life.
And hopefully finding a term of endearment that doesn't make you want to crawl out of your own skin.
That is the ultimate goal. But before we go, I have to share this one last thing from our research that just made me laugh. A superstition from the Middle Ages.
Oh, is this the morning window roulette?
Yes. The belief was that the very first unmarried person you saw on Valentine's morning was destined to be your spouse.
Which led to some hilarious social engineering.
The sources say families would literally lock their daughters in their rooms and stand guard at the window until the right suitor happened to walk by.
Don't look yet. It's the blacksmith.
Right.
Okay, here comes the merchant's son. Look now.
Can you imagine the pressure? You're half asleep, you look out the window, you see the milkman, and you're like, well, I guess that's it. Destiny has spoken.
I think we can all be very grateful for modern dating apps. At least you can swipe left on Destiny if you want to.
Absolutely. Well, this has been a really fascinating look under the hood of February 14th. We hope you feel a little more equipped to handle the English effect this year.
Indeed. Words are tools. Use them wisely.
And speaking of using them, we have a challenge for you.
Yeah.
We've gone through 10 powerful words today. Adoration, cherish, fervent, gesture. You know the list.
Where will you pick just one? The one that resonates with you right now. Maybe you're in a season of yearning. Maybe you're ready to proclaim something.
Head down to the comment box, pick your word, and write us one original sentence using it. It can be about a partner, a friend, a pet, anything. We just want to see you using the tools.
I will be reading them. I'm hoping to see some good uses of Suitor.
Good luck with that. And thank you so much for deep diving with us today. If you enjoyed this mix of history and language, please hit that like button, share this with someone you cherish, and subscribe.
See you next time.
Bye for now.